So welcome to Powerless Penguins United Big Book Study. This week I'm pleased to welcome back Max, who's come along to carry on doing the Big Book Study. Over to you, Max.
Morning, Noz. Morning, everybody. Happy New Year. I know it's the 10th of January. It's like, when I'm at work this week, it's like, when do you stop saying Happy New Year? Because we've been here now. But no, Happy New Year to everybody, and it's great to be back. Thank you to Andy, who was with you guys last week. And I'm sure you had an amazing session with him. My name is Mags, and I'm an alcoholic. And yeah, it's that time of year where everybody makes their New Year's resolutions, isn't it? Many already may be broken by now. That's the way that little thing goes, isn't it? But for everybody that's in the today, and if anybody's listening to the recorder at a later date, and no matter what time of the year you're listening to this, it's we're at the point in the book on page 75 where we're at the bottom paragraph, and it brings us through a lot of reflection up to this point. And of course I'll go into that line by line, but as I was getting ready this morning in my usual early morning routine and thinking about lots of different things, but really, honing it into the purpose of why we're here as recovered alcoholics and addicts, or if you're in the process of becoming recovered, and you're sitting in this meeting and you've made that commitment to yourself this year. This year is going to be the year where you're not going to be affected by drink or alcohol, whatever it is that you're addicted to, whatever mind-altering substance. And, when I come into a meeting, I often ask myself, why am I here? It's good to ask myself that question. So if you're here, ask yourself that question. Why are you here? Are you here because your friends are here? Are you here to see somebody just because you want to see them? Are you here because, I don't know, you've got to ask yourself. There's people from all over the world here that come at all different times of the night and day, and there's access to these tapes, 24/7. You can tap into this at any given moment of the day. So why is it in particular that you're coming to this meeting? And if it's because it's about the solution and how you want to improve your program, or how you want to know more about Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's, I don't know, strengthening the depth and weight of the message that you want to carry in a meeting, then that's all for the good. But if it's going to be another year of just coming to meetings and that's it, then that is not the full solution. Really and truly, it's not. And we've talked about that from the beginning of last January, about the importance of being immersed right in the heart of those 36 spiritual principles. Your own recovery, the base of that triangle, the service and the unity. There's a couple of people on here this morning, and it's great that, they pop up at various different meetings. Doing service. Derek, Laws, Angie, Carrie, thank you for the beautiful reading. And so many others in the army. And please don't get a resentment if I haven't mentioned your name this morning. You know how this works. There's so many people on here that I see regularly throughout the course of the week, and know that, when we are of service, the aggregate of all of those service positions adds up to something else. You might be rocking up at this meeting or other meetings thinking, why am I doing this? What's the point of all of this? But through my experience, just showing up and being of service and giving of your time and given of your experience when you share back as to what the solution has been from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, giving that all away returns to you in ways that you will not be able to articulate. And it doesn't matter whether you know what that's going to be or not. You've heard me say it many, many times. The not knowing is the gift. What you don't know is going to be for your benefit. You know, because we're in the world to play the role that he assigns, as we know from that section on the fear inventory. Perhaps there is a better way. We're on a different basis at this point in the program. We understand that we're here to play the role that he assigns. And I often ask myself that question too. You know, am I doing his work well? Am I doing the powers work well? Because if I'm not doing the powers work well, then what am I doing? How am I spending my time? Anyway, to anybody that's returning, anybody that's new, you're very welcome. We've been waiting for you, and may this be your year. So into the paragraph, bottom of page 75, this paragraph is amazing, really amazing. Before Christmas, we completed the part of the book around the fifth step. I have had many, many calls and messages after that session about the fifth step, and I've had the pleasure and the honour of listening to a few people's fifth step that I have not known before, and they have engaged in completing this, as it says in the big book, with other persons. So that's been a beautiful thing to do over the last number of weeks as well. And I would say that if you're sitting here this morning, this evening, it might be in your part of the world, or you're listening to the recording later on, and you don't know what I'm talking about, or you haven't got to this part of the book or the program with your sponsor, then that's okay. But feel free to message, email, get in touch with me if I can be of any guidance or support or whatever, but know that your sponsor is your first port of call. But yeah, we got to the end of the fifth step process, you know, where we admitted to God. In the short form, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. And yeah, obviously that was because we had gone through that fourth step inventory. This paragraph has to be taken in the context at the time in which the book was written. So obviously this was in the 1930s, when the first 100 were just building the fellowship. They were creating their vision for themselves as to what Alcoholics Anonymous was going to look like. There were very few people in the fellowship at that time. It was growing fast at a rate that they then decided to put their experience into the written word and created the 164 pages with the clear-cut directions. So these people were in the United States, going all over from the East Coast and beyond to carry the message. Even before the book went into print, they were traveling about and picking up us alcoholics and sharing the word that had been given to them. They were completing their 12th step and trying to carry the message, having had already a spiritual awakening. So when they talk about here in this first line, returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. You can imagine that back in the day, they didn't have the accessibility to technology that we had. You know, the last paragraph in the foreword to the fourth edition talks about modem to modem. Well, they didn't have that back in the day. So they would have had to be traveling spiritual people, like traveling salesmen, to carry this message. So if they were meeting with sponsees, they would have had long distances to travel back to their home. And the simple instruction, returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, is a critical instruction in this part of the book. So with my sponsees or anybody's fifth step that I listen to, the same applies. Even if you're in your own house, if you've met your sponsor on Zoom, or if I've met a sponsee on Zoom, they find a quiet place after they've completed the fifth step process and sit quietly for at least an hour. And I do the same after that long talk, after that conversation, after they've gone through the resentment inventory, the fear inventory, and the sex inventory. And the reason why it's so incredibly important to take that quiet time is because of the clear-cut directions that are set out in the rest of this paragraph. This is where we start to get into a routine of review, prayer, meditation. You know, effectively what this 1 hour is a period of reflection and meditation on what you have completed up to this point. I always feel that this paragraph is giving us not only the opportunity to reflect on everything from the very beginning, from the front cover page when we've been with our sponsor, but it's a little nod to what is going to happen in the future. A little nod to step 10, watching, asking. Turning is the third part. And I'll explain that as we go through. It's given a little nod to step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. So it's given us a little nod to those daily reprieve steps. And you know, I say all the time that we grow where we're planted. And I'm really, really, really looking forward to getting into those steps because they're not so far away. So if you have already taken your fifth step and you haven't taken that hour and you're starting to sponsor individuals in the near future or are sponsoring individuals, it would be important to emphasize taking that 1 hour of quiet time after the completion of that fifth step. And what do we do with that? We carefully review what we have done. So this is the time where you're going back right to the front cover page. You might not physically go through every single page within this hour, but there's a way to carefully review what you've done. And it again gives us the instruction as to how we do that within this paragraph. Okay, so you're going to very carefully reflect and pause and think through what you've done so far. Because the reality of it is you've been in this motion of moving forward, haven't you? Step 1 right the way through to this point. You've been turning the pages. You've been showing up with your sponsor. Your natural inclination is to want to know what happens next, what happens next, what happens next. And often with sponsees, it's like, are we not finished step 1 yet? We're not finished step 1. We're only on page 22 and they want to know when step 1 finishes. Little do they know that they've got another 24 pages, 25 pages to go yet. And you see the deflation in their face when you say, no, we're not even halfway through step 1 yet. You know? And when we get into we agnostics, when is this going to end? When is this going to end? What's happening next? What's happening next? There's no God in my life. Well, hold on a second. It's a process. And when we get into chapter 5, how it works. When am I doing my prayer? When am I doing my inventories? When are the inventories going to finish? When am I getting into my step 5? It's all this anticipation of what happens next, what happens next, what happens next. Because us human beings need to know. We need to know. when in actual fact what we're doing the whole way through this process is setting aside every single thing we think we know to have a new experience with God, but the anticipation of, yes, turning the pages, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. When the world that we're living in is God's speed. So we're carefully reviewing what we have done. But before we go into that review, the one thing we do is, like a prayer, we thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. Because remember, on page 25, here's where the review takes place. On page 25, the first 100, when they're talking about their spiritual experience, talk about the fact that with absolute certainty, they tell us that their creator, the God of their own understanding, their spirit of the universe, their mother nature, their realm of the spirit, doesn't matter what you call it, but they're setting out to us on page 25 that with absolute certainty, their creator has entered into their hearts and lives in them in a way that is miraculous. So through this process, all the way through, you have started to tap into what was once an unsuspected inner resource. And the reality of it is, whether you believe it or not, or whether you like it or not, you could not have got to step 5 by yourself. You couldn't have got through every single point up to this point of your own will. Remember that when we started that 3rd step prayer, that we were entering into this prayerful exercise with the power that is greater than you. So it would be appropriate to thank God from the bottom of your heart that you do know him better. Again, setting aside every single thing you think you know in this moment to have the new experience with God, because if you're really willing, as per the essential requirements and those requirements that are completely and utterly indispensable for the rest of your life, if you're really willing to be honest with yourself and have that open mind, who has done this with you? Remember that when we covered that in the study, it's not how we've done it. Yes, the instructions are there, but the W, the willingness, the H, the honesty, the O, the open-mindedness, it's who has done this with you. Remember that 3rd step prayer. You ask God to build with me, to do with me, so that others could bear witness to his power, his love, his way of life. So you're thanking God from the bottom of your heart that you do know him better, that he is done with you. He has built with you all of the things that you've needed to get to this point. And that word build is really important, because we then, within this paragraph, continue to reflect on some of those masonry terms that I've joked about before. I thought that my sponsor was Bob the Builder back in the day when I first came into the rooms, because he kept talking about all of these masonry terms. And it turns out he was a salesman, and he didn't sell bricks and mortar like it refers to in this paragraph. Far from it. He was a tech buddy. I don't even know what he does. Tech means nothing to me. It's alien. But all of these masonry terms that he used to talk about, I thought he was an architect or something. I don't know. Anyway, so we're thanking God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. And like when you're sitting here listening to this morning, or whenever you're listening to it, ask yourself that, in this process, do you know God better? How do you know God better? Take a moment to reflect on all of that. Even if that be that you're aware of the fact that you have to tap into something, whether you believe or not at this point, completely believe, that's okay. Doesn't matter. Are you continuing to be willing to believe that this power will restore you to sanity? You know, that's the step 2 in the short form. You've heard me say before, I don't know when I came to believe that God would restore me to sanity or had restored me to sanity. I don't know exactly the point. I just know now in my life that he has. All of the people that are recovered, you know, you're searching for God. Prove to me that there is a God. Well, we've got nothing to prove to you that there is a God. We are the proof that there is a God. It's not my responsibility to prove to you there is a God. I am the proof there is one. Because I wouldn't be able to be free from alcohol and all mind-altering substances if there wasn't something else working in my life. I hope that makes sense the way that I've said that. If not, let me know. And the thing that really jumps out at me this morning with that line, it's like that we know him better. Not that he knows us better. He's known us all along. He's always been there. And I use the word he, pronoun, because it's easier and it's the one that's in the book. Choose whatever one you want. I don't really care. It's none of my business either. That we know him better. Because you will be able to reflect on all of those little moments of when you were going through the experience in We Agnostics. You know, that beautiful gem of a chapter, the treasure trove chapter as I call it, where it never stops giving us more and more reasons why that we should become convinced, moved by the evidence in our own life that God actually was there all along. We just hadn't recognized it. You know, all of those moments in those dark, dark days where you'd called out to God and said, please help me, and you didn't think that God had helped you. You hear me say it all the time. We're all sitting in a prayer that we once asked for. Even this morning, we're sitting in a prayer we once asked for. I know I am. And believe me, there's a couple of people in here, or a number of people in here, are currently sitting in a prayer that I once asked for them, for sure. That they would get to the solution, that they would get to a sponsor, that they would get to a big book study, that they would get to be of service, that they would get to have a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. That's how connected we all are, you know. So it says about the fact now that taking this book down from our shelf, I see Jack W. sitting there with a beautiful bookshelf in his background in his beautiful comfy chair in Florida. Sending so much love to you, Jack. I love to see your beautiful face every time here. Yeah, if the book was there, you'd take it down from the shelf. Me, I often just take it from the right-hand side because it's always on my kitchen table. But again, it's the context from when it was back in the day. I know some people, there you go, Jack. I know some people, I have this friend, he's in the States, and when he does this, book study or whatever, he always talks about the fact that even if he has his book on his desk in front of him and he gets to this point, he'll actually put it on the shelf and take it off the shelf and do exactly what it says. God love him. But if that's his little rhythm and routine, that's fine. You know, like some people have little superstitions that they have to do. It's okay to have those little things. But yeah, the important thing though is we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. So at this point within the hour that you're spending, you're essentially turning to page 59. And you're going to the summary page that includes the 12 steps. And you're looking at those 12 steps in the short form. First of all, on page 59. It says again carefully, you know, when we're carefully doing something, we're like painstaking. We're making an effort to make sure that we're avoiding any omissions. We're carefully reviewing this and making sure that we haven't left anything out. Oh, it says that. We ask if we have admitted anything. So within this hour, there's the prayer. We're asking if we have omitted anything from those first 5 proposals. So what we're looking at, and I'm going to work through these, we're asking God if we have omitted anything from our first step experience. Have we omitted anything about the fact that we admitted, we let the idea in, that we put powerless over alcohol, physically, mentally, and that our lives have become unmanageable? Have we omitted anything from going through that process with our sponsor? Do you understand the physical allergy? Do you understand from the doctor's opinion what it's telling you? Do you understand that you are different from non-alcoholic people? Do you understand that you're a real alcoholic, as set out on page 21? That at some point in your drinking career, you have lost all control. Back to the doctor's opinion. Do you understand the physical allergy? Do you know that you're different? Do you understand that you react abnormally to a really abnormal or really normal substance? Do you understand and recall the fact that when you were in step 1, that you can never, ever safely drink alcohol in any form at all, ever again? And the reason why you're going through these steps is to stop altogether. Do you recall the fact that as soon as you put one drink in, that you will 1,000,000% set off the phenomenon of craving, which will result in the fact that you will need more and more and more and more. And the only way that you're only ever going to receive that sense of ease and comfort once you pick up one is to have more and more and more. And it is only a sense of ease and comfort. It's not real. Do you recall the fact that when you're not drinking, you've got this mental obsession? That when you're not drinking, you're thinking about drinking. This total and utter preoccupation with this totally and utterly unreasonable idea that it's okay to pick up once, even though the record would tell you that it's not. That to pick up one is absolute and utter insanity, as is set out in your step 1 process. More about alcoholism. You're reviewing all of those first 45 pages. We've entered into that detail. You're reviewing all of this information during this 1 hour, as well as the other steps. It's a wonderful reminder of where you've come from and where you've got to. And whilst my sponsee is doing this 1 hour, I'm doing the same. Have I omitted anything? Have I not given them something from the clear-cut directions? Do I need to remind them of something? Is there something that I haven't gone into too much detail about? Or, do I need to provide some clarity? Or, again, it's an opportunity for me to be reminded when I take this 1 hour about where I am in my program as well. So you're working through the doctor's opinion, you're working through Bill's story. Do you identify with everything that he's saying in there? You're identifying with the progression of the illness. There is a solution. You're understanding that you've got no power, no choice, no control over drink. The insanity about picking up, all of the mental obsession, page 23 to page 43, the unmanageability of your life, which is the second half of the first step, is covered in page 44 and 45. That our problems are piling up on us, like it says in the doctor's opinion, and becoming incredibly difficult to solve. We think all of those problems are our problem, when in actual fact they're not. Because if we solve the drink and drug problem, we have no problems. So we got to focus on that. You're reviewing every single part of this really, really carefully, making sure you haven't omitted anything. You're then going into chapter 4, We Agnostics, step 2. came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. You're going through all of those pages in We Agnostics, reviewing the things that have come up there, reminding yourself about why one should become convinced that this power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Or are you still in a state of agnosticism sometimes, agnostic temperament as they call it in We Agnostics? And that does happen. Sometimes we can drop into that agnostic temperament. But as we move forward, we have tools in our spiritual toolkit to be able to ensure that that happens less often, and we understand that our go-to is this power. So we're reviewing all of the information within that chapter. We're reviewing in step 3, have we actually made this decision? Have you truly, in your heart of hearts, at this point, even though you've got to page 75, and even though you've done you've completed the inventories and all of that, and you've got to your step 5, long talk, conversation with your sponsor, ask yourself honestly, from the bottom of your heart, have you truly made the decision to do this? To continue to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understood Him? Because you're in the process of turning over right now. We're turning it over from steps 4 right the way through to step 7. You've still got 6 and 7 to go. There's still turning over to do. So have you truly made the decision to do this process, live by this way of living, and cut away all of the other stuff in your life that hasn't worked up to this point? And are you prepared to continue to stay committed to being willing? In your step 4, you're reviewing, have you been fearless? Have you been thorough? Have you completed that fearless and thorough moral inventory of yourself? Is there anything that you have omitted? Is there anything that you've forgotten to tell your sponsor? If something jumps into your mind at this point and you go, oh my God, how did I forget that? That's okay. Talk to your sponsor about it. It isn't the case that you've done your 5th step wrong and that you have to go all the way back to the start. That's not it. What this process is enabling you to do is to become more and more awake to these things. So as you move forward into your step 6 and beyond, there will be other things that are brought to your mind, that are given to you in your thought process through your prayer and meditation, that you haven't been able to see in that most recent 4th step inventory, that you haven't talked about in the 5th step talk with your sponsor. All of these things are going to be coming to the light, coming into your consciousness, and you will have a method and a way of dealing with those things going forward. Okay, so don't go into panic stricken, oh my God, I've omitted this one teacher from 1982 that wasn't on my list. Whatever, just talk to your sponsor about it. You're not going to drink over it. You're not going to use over it, but don't hold on to it. There's no point. Anybody that has that wee resentment because I didn't mention your name at the beginning of the meeting this morning, talk to your sponsor about it, or watch what's going on and why you're reacting like that, because it's actually not really your sponsor's problem either. It's just something that's going on inside you. You have to watch and ask for it to be removed and resolutely turn your thoughts to somebody else. That might not mean anything to you because you're not at step 10 yet, so sorry if I'm causing you any confusion. At this point, if you're only on step 5 and you've got a resentment, just ask God to take it away. You'll be grand. As they say here in Ireland, you'll be grand. And that means 700 different variations and meanings, depending on what the situation is. So then you're reviewing step 5. Have you admitted to God all of the things? Have you admitted to yourself all of the things? And have you spoken to your sponsor and those other people that you've gone through your step 5 with all of those things, the exact nature of your wrongs? Have you gone through all of those things? And if there's anything that crops up that you believe you need to speak to your sponsor, then this is the point. You take note of it. Take the action with it. Do something about it. So it's going to take a bit of time in this hour to cover, all of those little things. Might take you more than the hour. but invest in they are in the first instance, you know. So you're carefully reading the first 5 proposals. All of that stuff that I've just gone through there is the first 5 proposals. We've asked if we have omitted anything. And the reason why we're doing this, for we are building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last. These next couple of lines are phenomenal, fantastic, because it reminds us as to where we're at. Remember, we talked about that archway. If you don't, remember, we are building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last. The archway was first talked about on page 62, the last paragraph. This is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. This is before we're moving into taking that 3rd step prayer. We had to quit playing God. Why? It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, remember at that point you were in this drama of life, God was going to be your director. This was the decision that you were making. This is the sincere position that you're taking. God is your director. He is the principal. You are his agent. He is the father, and we are his precious, perfect children. And that most good ideas are simple. And this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we passed to freedom. So that line reminding us that we're building this archway through which we shall walk a free man at last. That's the point that we are at. It's reminding us here about the fact that God is the director. He is the principal. You are his agent. You're here to do his work well. The 3rd step promises on page 63. You're here to play the role that he assigns. Page 68, your fear inventory. It's reminding us of the sincere position that we have taken us. Is our work solid so far? So those first 5 proposals, is your work solid so far? Have you been fearless? Have you been thorough? Have you gone through the clear-cut, masterly details that are set out in this big book? Because if you haven't, what have you been doing? Are the stones properly in place? This is an important one. It talks about it at the bottom of page 62. Is your keystone properly in place? The keystone is the stone at the top of the archway. Your keystone is what we've just gone through on page 62. That God is the director. He's leading the way. You're no longer running the show. That you work for God. That we are agents of God. We are spearheads, like it says in We Agnostics, of God's ever advancing creation. Moving forward with everything, not looking back and regretting the past. We've got rid of the past. We've asked God to remove all of these things in us in our 5th step conversation. All of the stuff that we were affected by, all of the cause of our anger, all of those 7 stimuli, your pride, your self-esteem, your pocketbook, your security, your personal relations, your sex relations, your ambition. All of that is in the past. We're now moving forward on a different trajectory with a willingness that we've never been able to muster before. Having identified all of the exact nature of our wrongs, we're heading in another direction now. We are still maintaining that certain simple attitude. But is that stone properly fixed in place? The other stone that it's referring to that you may not remember is on page 47. It's bringing us back and it's reminding us of this. It's the paragraph on page 47 where it talks about the cornerstone. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, right in this moment, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. Doesn't matter whether you believe or are willing to believe, you are on the right path. And it still might be the case, having completed your step 5. You might full on 100% believe. You might not. But are you still willing to believe? Then you're still okay. You're still going to be okay. Because we're in this prayerful exercise. And you're going to add to your spiritual toolkit as you move towards having this spiritual awakening as the result of all of the 12 steps. Because it goes on to say on page 47, it has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. The archway to freedom. The arch through which we're going to be walking through, free people at last, like never before. That's what it's talking about. The cornerstone, remember, another masonry term. Any building, now, if there's any architects or builders on here, and I get this wrong, and you want to teach me how to say this more intelligently, then feel free to get in touch. But if I say this all the wrong way, I'm pretty cool with it, to be honest, because I'm not a specialist in this. But what I do know in really simple terms is that any building has a cornerstone, and the cornerstone has to be properly fixed in place. Because if the cornerstone is not properly fixed in place, then the rest of the building's going to be wonky. Wonky is a technical term. It's my technical term. And if my cornerstone, my belief in this power greater than myself, if it's not properly fixed in place, then the rest of my archway is going to be a bit wonky, going to be a bit shaky. And it tells us in We Agnostics a little bit later on page 56, about the fact that Fitzmayo, remember that his cornerstone was fixed in place. The bottom of page 56, no later vicissitude has ever shaken it. No matter what happens in my life, there's not one single thing that can knock my cornerstone. No later vicissitude has ever shaken it. Since I have had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, my cornerstone has always, and will continue to be always properly fixed in place as long as I continue to do what is suggested. I heard someone share at a meeting the other night that something happened with his car and he thought he was going to drink again. I thought, what? Something happened with your car and you thought you were going to drink again? He had to call his sponsor and talk it all through. Happy days, great that he talked to his sponsor. But you were going to drink over something happening with your car. What happens with the cornerstone? No later vicissitude. If the cornerstone was properly fixed in place, and I know that that's a really silly example that I'm giving now, but my thought process was, if something happens with my car, if I had a car, and I felt that I was going to drink over that, there's something wrong with my spiritual condition. I need to look at what's going on in my life right there. But I can safely say, by following the clear-cut directions, there's no later thing, nothing that has happened in my life genuinely has shaken me to the point where I think that I will return to alcohol. Wouldn't return to it even if I could, like it says in our first step experience. So are those stones properly fixed in place? Is your keystone, you've made the decision, you've sincerely taken that position, is your cornerstone, you're willing to believe, coming to believe that this power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity around alcohol and whatever is your mind-altering substance. Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? Well, we all know, again, I'm not an architect, I'm not a builder, I'm not a construction person, whatever. If you haven't got good foundations, the building's a bit wonky. The house will collapse It might stay up for a good bit of time, but there's always a little bit of shakiness going on. There's always going to be problems. So the same applies to you. Is your foundation firm? Is your step one and your willingness, is it firm? Is your willingness there? Because remember, it continues for our lifetime. It's an essential, indispensable requirement. Have we tried to make mortar without sand? That didn't mean anything to me when my sponsor first talked to me about it. But the reality of it is, this is what this means. If you make mortar without sand, what happens is the solution that you're trying to make up, if there's no sand in it, it's not going to be the right consistency to do the job that it needs to do. It's going to be weak. It's going to be brittle. Cement and water just together isn't enough. We need to have the mortar. We need to have the sand. If we don't have that proper mix, that proper concoction of everything up to this point, that solution shrinks. It cracks. There's poor bonding in that solution. And it's difficult to work with. You know, I am difficult to work with when I'm not in this solution. I am difficult to work with if I don't have a sound, solid foundation. The structure fails entirely. If my stones aren't properly fixed in place, the foundation isn't right, and if I've scrimped on any of the cement that binds and bonds us, then that structure is going to fall down around me. I might get a short period of time or an elongated period of time. The time doesn't matter, but let me tell you, it's going to come falling down around you if these things aren't properly fixed in place. See the value of this review? One paragraph, the value of the review. Because at this point, when we turn the page into page 76 to move into steps 6 and 7, if you haven't done everything as set out in the clear-cut directions up to this point, some things might be a wee bit wonky. Your foundations might not be set. The stones might need adjusted. All of those are metaphoric things to say. But in your mind, in your thought process, in your heart, where God lives in you, in a way that is miraculous, you may have to just readjust the dial at this point and ask yourself honestly, the things that I have omitted, where do I sit with that? Before you even move to 6 and 7. This is your turning point. Again, you had the turning point on page 59. You stand at the turning point. We ask His protection and care with complete abandon before you moved into that third step process. There is one. May you find Him now. Because you're going to continue with the process into 6 and 7. I'm not saying that you stop at 5 if you've omitted anything. You rectify it. You add and mix the mortar, the sand, the cement, the foundations. You cover anything that you have omitted. You talk to your sponsor about it. You truly make the decision, etc., etc., etc. And then you get ready. Because the trajectory 6 into 7 is when the rubber meets the road. So I'm just going to leave you for an hour to reflect on all of that stuff at some point over the weekend. And then we move into 6 and 7 next week. So thank you for that. And by the way, if anybody isn't at this point, has a question about any of that stuff, if you haven't got anything to share but would like some insight, I'll try and answer a question if you have one. But ultimately your sponsor is your first port of call. Thank you, Lois.